Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 5 of Goddamn Gamecube. If you like our show, please leave us a rating on Spotify and subscribe on YouTube. Thank you, and enjoy today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Goddamn Gamecube. Greg and Riley are your hosts today. Nick, the intern, is with us as well. And our friend Josh Lacroix is with us. Josh, say hello.
Hey, everybody.
Now, this is not Josh from Season 1. This is a different Josh. And today on the show, we are discussing an industry topic. We have not done a games industry topic in a while. We've done a lot of specific video games. Today, we're going to be talking about what I think is a very important subject in the gaming industry and something that's gotten more attention probably over the past maybe decade or 7 or 8 years. We're going to be talking about accessibility in video games, and more specifically, we're talking about accessibility in regards to hearing impaired gamers, visually impaired gamers, or gamers with a physical impairment. This is not an episode that's about, like, should Dark Souls have an easy mode? Like, because that's always a contentious subject that may be a part of this conversation, but we are really focusing on other aspects of accessibility in that definition. So I do want to introduce Josh Lacroix. So Josh and we worked at an audio company together for about a year, and I had been talking to Josh for a couple of months about how, I wanted to have you on the show. Like, you and I were discussing, video games. We started to get to know each other, and sort of we had some mutual interests. And Josh, can you tell us why you are on the show today?
Well, Greg, I think it's because I'm your right-hand man. In all seriousness, I have one hand. The technical term is a congenital amputee below the elbow. A lot of times people will mistake being an amputee for something that is removed, but really it just means you're missing a limb no matter what. So yeah, that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I remember talking to you like at that audio company, and it was something that what's the word for this? I feel like I should just be very straightforward now that we're on record. Where you told me you played video games, and the subject of accessibility had been sort of going around the industry for a long time. And I said, Josh plays games. I hope he's okay with talking about it because I'm interested in your experience. Let's just be straight up, like playing games like with one hand. And so I said,
not with two.
Yeah, definitely not with two. So I wanted to get you on the show. We are going to start with some questions very specifically like for you or about you and things that I think you would be knowledgeable on. And after that, just to sort of give our audience I guess maybe a view into what this episode is going to be about, we're going to start with the physical aspects of games, and then we're going to get into other like visual or oral or hearing aspects of games. So Josh, let's start. First question right off the top here. Like, have you always played video games, and did having one hand discourage you from trying them, or maybe early in life, or how did that come together?
Sure. I've played video games all my life, really. And in the very beginning, I think it was just luck of the draw as far as being born in 98, because I think one of the biggest reasons I can play games is the advent of the joystick.
Sure.
And I think like the first console I got, for example, was a Super Nintendo, which obviously doesn't have one. And I wasn't really enjoying it too much. It was fun because it was a new thing. It was exciting because I knew it was video games. I knew Mario and I knew Luigi, but playing as them with just a D-pad was a little more challenging than I anticipated. But luckily, it was around this time where I got a PS2, and that's where I was actually playing video games regularly, having fun, enjoying it, so on and so forth.
Okay, so you kind of answered my next question, but I do find it interesting. So help us understand this. Like, what are some aspects of controllers or controls in general that are maybe more difficult for you or annoying for you, or maybe things we wouldn't think about?
Sure. Like I said, kind of, if just going off of a D-pad alone is a little tricky. Luckily, like I said before, I'm below the elbow, so I have a little extra limb than I guess some other amputees may not have. Which makes it a lot easier to use like a joystick. As far as anything on the left side of a controller, like L2, for example, on PlayStation, I use my thigh to kind of just push the controller right into it.
Okay.
So doing that kind of allowed me to get over that hurdle, so to speak. But a lot of those earlier consoles, like a lot of Nintendo, I wasn't really playing much throughout my whole life, even now, honestly.
Okay. Now, do you ever remap or reconfigure controls to make something more playable or more enjoyable?
It doesn't happen too often, honestly, but I have done it before.
Any examples?
Yeah, the most recent would be the Jedi Fallen Order series.
Sure.
I think originally they had L2 for a block, if I'm not mistaken, and that's something you have to regularly use.
You have to use it
game.
so often.
Yeah, so I was able to kind of remap the controls for that purpose, kind of bring over, if I use a certain move more often than others, I'll kind of route it over to an easier button for myself.
Got it. Okay, interesting. Okay.
So what kind of move would you put for an L2 button? Like what would be more comfortable for you to use that trigger or bumper for?
In that game particularly, I think you can force pull an object, usually for traversal, like a rope or a vine or something.
You have to use it that often, right?
Yeah, so that was something where I found I'd be doing that quite a bit. But not as often as, say, blocking or something like that.
Sure, where blocking is by the millisecond. Right.
You could take your time. You could, aim
Yeah.
it up. Yep, that makes sense.
And now you answered this a little bit already. Are there any examples of games you could not play, or maybe you were interested in playing and perhaps you felt either you were left out or you couldn't experience it?
A lot of them when I was a kid were just DS games. I mean, I think that kind of plays into the D-pad problem.
Yeah, sure.
While other kids were getting to play Mario and stuff like that, like I missed out on a lot of Nintendo's catalog because of that.
Sure.
And then they made the Wii, where you have to use sometimes two controls at the same time.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
No offense to Nintendo.
Console. No notes on that one.
Yeah, and I mean that was kind of the problem for a while, but now with VR, you know, that kind of plays into it too, where you have to have two controllers at once for a lot of these games. So I'm finding trouble with that.
So would you say like you mentioned the DS, would you say those handhelds consoles were more difficult than maybe a console that you'd plug into a TV?
Oh, absolutely. I never really had one. I mean, there's your answer there.
That'll
you
do
know?
it. Mm-hmm.
I know eventually when I think it was the 3DS that had the first joystick on a DS, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
but
yeah.
That one I tried a little bit. That was more fun than any other one that I had before. But even like a PSP was like the only one that I could sort of play.
Just had to have a joystick, really.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay,
Yeah.
makes sense.
I was just gonna bring up. You just mentioned VR. I figured that would be a good time to veer off into this lane here.
Mm-hmm.
Have you played many VR games, and do you enjoy them? I know you were struggling with some of them.
Yeah, I mean, I've played a couple here and there. I can't think of any of the names off the top of my head, but there was one particular one that was kind of like John Wick, sort of, kind of. It was kind of had like a
Talking about Pistol Whip?
It could be, yeah.
Yeah.
It plays like electronic music.
Yeah, it's Pistol Whip.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, that has like a one-handed function, which was great because I was
That's
able to
right.
do
You
that
can go
one.
one gun or two.
Right, exactly. But I've always wanted to try the two. And, you know, other VR games where you might be using, you know, multiple swords or a sword and a shield or anything like that, I'd like to play, but might not be able to.
Now, do you think like advances in VR gaming technology can help with accessibility, or do you feel like because now it's with two controllers, you think it's we're kind of I don't know, toast here for right now?
Well, I mean, I think as long as we have other options, like one-handed options, we should be okay. But I mean, it comes down to a point where you really do need just two controllers. So
Sure.
It makes sense, at least to me, that, you know, companies would still want to push out games where, you know, the majority of people have two hands. Sure, they're going to want to play, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad you brought up one-handed mode because that's another subject we wanted to bring up. I encountered one-handed mode once in one game I played. So I was curious, how many games have you seen that feature a one-handed mode? Have you had a good experience with them? Has it given you maybe the same experience that you think other gamers would have had using two hands?
It only comes down to like games that you really need two controllers for that I've seen that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there may be games out there, just like regular console games that have one-handed features, but I haven't really seen them. It's really just ones like the Wii. Like one that I can think of is The Force Unleashed.
Yeah, sure.
For the Wii, where, I mean, I think it's the second one where you have two lightsabers and never even attempted to try it, you know?
Right.
You kind of need both. So.
Right. I mean, well, also, I mean, you're a big Star Wars fan. We didn't bring that up.
This
but
is true, yeah.
Yep.
Biggest fan to most amputees, I'd say.
There's a lot of representation
Nice.
there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, the reason I asked that question about one-handed mode, it's not really the kind of game I feel that really would like benefit the most from one, but where I saw it the first time was actually with Dragon Quest XI, which is a
wow.
turn-based RPG.
Oh, I remember
Oh,
you talking about
interesting.
that.
Yeah, so it's not, it's turn-based RPG. You don't need to make, these timed inputs.
Right.
You can take your time, but it did have that mode, and I was curious if you had seen it in other console games or if maybe that had taken off.
Not too much. No.
Okay.
I mean, maybe it's just the turn-based RPG
Sure.
portion. I don't. It is kind of an odd choice to have that functionality, but I don't play too many of those types.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's fair.
from what I've seen, no, not really.
Okay.
I was going to tag on to that because I'm always so interested in the workarounds and how it works out. And it's interesting you mentioned about like the shoulder button or the trigger, like pressing it into your thigh and stuff like that. I was actually digging around for some. There's this fellow who makes custom Xbox controllers. And
Timothy Chalamet? He does. Sorry, go ahead.
Not him, no. But like the way that he designed some of them is that one of the joysticks was actually on the bottom, and then you kind of like rolled it around on his knee or whatever. And I thought that was kind of
That's
Oh,
cool.
interesting.
Yeah, no, I think that could be part of the reason why I kind of grew up as like a PlayStation guy versus Xbox, because having the two joysticks kind of closer to you versus Xbox, where that
They're
other
separate,
joystick
yeah.
is further up. I think that does make it easier.
Mhm.
Again, I mean, I have a little bit of arm below the elbow, so that makes it a lot easier than say somebody where they might not be able to actually even reach the controller.
Right. Sure.
I did also want to bring up I've been whining a lot in our recent episodes about we're playing some older games with a lot of QuickTime events and like button mashing and stuff, and it's like I'm just at that age where that annoys me now. So it called to mind, like, are there any mechanics in particular you find frustrating?
I was actually playing the Spider-Man 2 game.
Yeah.
And I know there's a couple different times where you have to hold L2 and R2 at the same time.
Oh yeah.
And now with the PS5, obviously, there's like sensitivity to it where you're only pulling the triggers halfway versus, just pulling the whole thing.
Mhm.
So I've noticed that's a little trickier.
Right.
But yeah, and I'm not a big fan of QuickTime events either. I mean, they're a little unnecessary.
Mhm.
I thought we had outgrown them, to be honest with you. These Spider-Man games are keeping them
They've
going.
kind of made a little resurgence,
I don't
which
like
is not
not
great.
my favorite.
I think luckily with that game though, you can, if you do at least like the easy mode, or not easy mode, but story mode or whatever the heck it is, where you can kind of cut all that stuff out, which is
Right.
kind of nice. But I remember playing like old Tony Hawk games. I think it was American Wasteland, where you have to button mash in order to pull off a certain trick.
Oh
And
yeah.
that can be quite tedious, but
Mhm.
I think that's just the nature of the beast, really.
Mhm. Riley, do you have anything else for this subject? You want to take us to the next question?
I think there was one that you had. It was kind of by contrast. Are there any games that you've played that you felt were especially accommodating?
I think any game that allows you the ability to kind of rebind your controls, you can kind of custom tailor that.
Spider-Man 2 let you do that?
I'm not sure, honestly.
Okay.
If it has, I don't think I've had to do it.
Okay,
But-
gotcha.
I feel like there's like no reason not to have that now, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I've definitely made that statement on this show before. I feel like, especially nowadays, every game should have full button remapping. No
Yeah.
excuses, really.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Well, I mean, it's existed on PC forever, right?
Yeah.
What key
Right.
do you want to do the thing?
Right.
Right.
I think just with games being more popular on PC now, like that's kind of bound to happen, I would
Right.
think.
Right.
Right.
I like one particular one is Rocket League. You can
Yeah.
completely custom tailor that.
Oh,
Okay.
Not to say I'm
cool.
any good, but
That's
usually you
right.
just tell them you have one hand and they feel bad. Good game. GG.
That's great.
Yeah.
I did have actually a specific to you question. If you can answer it,
You
what-
can have my number after the show. If that's what you're asking.
Shucks.
Yeah.
Now I got egg on my face. So what? If you can answer this, what is your favorite and least favorite game you've ever played?
Oh, geez. As far as least favorite, I think I can start there.
Oh, hell yeah.
That's the
always a
right
fun one.
mindset for this show.
Yeah. The latest Avengers game was just so disappointing.
Oh, really?
I mean,
Yeah.
it had nothing really to do with accessibility. That was like the last thing on the list of
Right.
what went wrong with it. But it was probably just so disappointing. I mean, right after the success of Spider-Man, right before it, and you're already expected to have this really good thing, and it wasn't much, honestly.
It seemed like one of those games where, like a couple months after it comes out, everyone's like, "Don't worry, it's good now." You know, like,
Yeah.
and that sucks.
As far as favorites, though, I mean, I think with video games at this point, at least for me, I have to break it down to my classic favorite and
Sure.
then a modern
Yeah.
favorite.
Yeah.
And I think classic favorite, the first Force Unleashed, I think
Yeah.
was
Hell yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
I loved it. I think that's why I was a little more disappointed when I couldn't play it on the Wii, but from what
Yeah.
I've seen, I didn't really miss much.
You know what? That kind of
on that.
answers an earlier question from the show. Like something you were disappointed you couldn't play or you were left out of was the Force
Yeah.
Unleashed 2.
That's true. I mean,
Yep.
again, it was for the Wii, which to my knowledge, it was like a totally different game for that port
Oh, yeah.
specifically, but it was still a cool feature. I mean, I know, kind of sidelining back to that other question,
Mm-hmm.
there was some games on the PS Move, if you remember that.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah. I tried that out. I had a lot of fun with that. I think there was some like gladiator ring type games where you could use a shield or a sword, where I would just have to use a sword. And just
You
hack
couldn't
and
block.
slash.
All offense, glass cannon.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So as far as a favorite game, I really like the new Star Wars Battlefront 2. I know it gets a lot of slack. I know. Probably just being a Star Wars kind of guy, but
Now, can I ask you, like, do you play multiplayer, like
I do.
online?
Yeah,
Okay.
not very well, but
Okay.
I do all right. You know,
They that was another one that turned around in the coming. Like I remember when they added that Ewok mode where they
Oh,
hunt
that's
you
horrifying.
at night. It's really
Yeah.
scary.
Do you ever talk shit to people online because you have one hand if
no,
you kick their ass?
I should though.
Yeah.
I really should.
Yeah.
Got to change my name to something that gives it away. You know.
yeah,
Yes, for sure.
That's
Nub
funny.
Scout 98, something like that. Pretty cool.
Greg, you had a question here.
You can take it if you see it.
What do you want to see in particular any standards for accessibility in new games in the coming years and beyond?
Well, I think if we're looking at VR, you know, obviously have that one arm mode or one-handed mode. I think that's a definite. Besides that, just rebinding. I mean, that's going to solve 99% of the issues people may face when they
Right.
play.
I think so too. Yeah.
I agree.
Something I actually did not have in our preparation, but I did want to ask you: have you ever used one of the like accessibility controllers, either made by Microsoft or made by other companies? You haven't any experience with them?
No, honestly, I've done it the hard way my whole life, pretty much.
Gotcha. Okay.
But you know, it's crazy. I've never even thought to look into that whatsoever.
Yeah, wasn't that 2017? When did they make that? We have it
2018.
2018. Yeah.
That's when it released. Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you guys want to move on to our next section here is the history of accessibility?
I have one last question.
Go ahead.
We got
Sure.
one more from Riley here. It's a good one.
Go ahead.
Do you have any favorite characters in games who have one arm?
Oh, geez. I think, I mean, gotta go. Is it Snake?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
nice,
there we go.
That's
Yeah.
probably like the best one out there.
Love
Gotcha.
He's so cool. I'm a big we're big Andy Securo fans on this show.
Yeah.
He's another one.
Yeah.
Great
Mhm.
stuff. There's quite a few in games, more than you'd expect, but we can move on whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so the next section is we're going to talk about the history of accessibility, sort of some bullet points in time where either accessibility was mentioned or something was done about it or not, like the sort of positive and negative. We're going to go through some bullet points in history. So let's go right through it. So the first bullet point I have here is 1980s, quote unquote. So Nintendo developed a hands-free controller in the 1980s that was only available if you reach out to their customer support team, and it was also incredibly expensive, where in modern money, it's $1,000.
I guess you could say it costs you an arm and a leg.
Nice,
Oh.
dude.
You waiting to say that all episode?
No.
Keep them coming, man.
Yeah.
This is great.
That's funny. Now,
But that is ridiculously expensive.
now
though.
I have never seen one of these in real life.
Yeah.
I have never anyone.
I was going to
No.
ask if you've ever, I've never, until you told us about it, I had no
I had
idea
never
what it
heard
was.
of
Yeah,
this.
no, me neither.
So we're gonna skip way ahead here to 2009. 2009, PlayStation 3 allows button mapping from the PlayStation menu, and that remap carries into all games that you play.
See, there it is,
I didn't
man.
even know that.
I didn't know that either. I wonder. Wow. We owned a PS3. Did you
Yeah,
ever
I didn't
take
even
advantage
know
of
that.
that?
No.
Yeah, I had no idea.
I didn't even know that was... Well, then again, it's probably limited, like your X becomes... Or I was about to say A, but that's Xbox. Like, your triangle becomes L1. It's probably like you have to swap.
Sure.
Right.
Okay.
It's one of those things too that I appreciate about a lot of the methods of games preservation that we resort to. They do have that option, and it's incredibly useful. Like there's some older GameCube games where it's just like, why is this on this button? It makes no sense.
Sure. So also in 2009, I didn't even know this, Stevie Wonder speaks at the Spike VGAs asking for more accessibility options.
You heard it from the man himself.
Now, like, does anyone know anything about this?
As I feel like most people know, maybe not younger folks, Stevie Wonder is a blind musician.
Yeah.
And he made a special appearance. And as far as I can see, that was the first, it was the biggest like public kind of, and it's like, come on, are you really going to disappoint Stevie Wonder? Like,
Interesting.
we got to have it.
I didn't even know that happened.
Yeah.
Okay, 2010, I find this interesting. Accessibility in media was passed as a part of U.S. legislation, U.S. law, but it did not state any guidelines for video games, only for other kinds of visual media.
That's Congress for you, man.
Yeah, that's Congress for you, baby. I don't remember actually what the bill is called. It does exist. I don't know if anyone remembers.
No, but yeah, you're right that it only applies to like, TV
movies and television.
Yeah.
I wonder why video games were excluded.
I don't know. They're only the biggest entertainment industry in the world. Like,
well, that's very 2010
Well, the
brand.
people who passed it probably don't play them. That's why.
Yeah,
It's
that's
probably
true. They
their
have no
answer.
idea what these are.
That's true. So 2014, something I actually didn't know, it's very gaming specific. A colorblind mode became available in Borderlands 2.
Was that the first time?
That's got to be one of the first examples of accessibility that was on purpose or patched in.
Right.
At least in a very, very popular game at any rate.
I'll say that we're going to talk about this later, but so in BioShock 2007, it was purposefully done by developers where when you see a key item, it glitters and the glittering makes a sound. So if you can't see it glittering, you can hear it shimmering. So
Yeah.
that was on purpose. It wasn't like
Or vice versa too.
Yeah, it wasn't like an accessibility patch in, but that was in the game.
Yeah.
Similar to like Uncharted and seeing a treasure, you get that kind of like
Shimmer, yeah.
That's
Yes.
on purpose.
Yes,
Yep,
exactly.
Yep. So 2015, the FCC mandates that in-game communication between players must adhere to sensory accessibility guidelines. Anyone have any comments on that?
That's interesting. So I guess what exactly? So is that communication between players? So you're playing a multiplayer game,
Right.
and there must be a Okay, so somebody kind of explain to my pea brain what that actually means.
I believe that.
I can
Go ahead, yeah.
elaborate a
Sure.
little bit here. Is that this kind of ties into where we were talking in the group chat, and I was like, "Man, fuck the ESA."
Ah, yes.
So
okay.
this provides a little bit more context. The Entertainment Software Association, it's a trade group that was established in the early '90s when video games became the source of public fervor. Tipper Gore and all those, and Joe Lieberman and all those fine folks, they're not happy with this game called Mortal Kombat that's showing spines getting ripped out.
Right. Yep.
So a lot of kind of more legislation is being drafted, and kind of these groups are advocating on behalf of the industry. But what they do is, especially now, historically they have lobbied Congress to say, please don't make any regulations, FCC regulations or anything like that apply to us, so we can just do whatever the fuck we want.
That's
I
wild.
see.
They lobbied so they wouldn't have to do anything.
So video games are lobbying now, huh?
It's
wow.
Is it any worse than you'd expect?
No.
I mean, it's pretty much
No.
on par with what we've seen, but they argue that the medium is exclusively entertainment. There's no communication element, which is of course bullshit.
Right.
Because
Yeah,
right.
Nick said, there's communication between players. But
right.
yeah, 2015.
Okay. 2016, EA creates an accessibility division. Now, I didn't think a company that called EA would do something positive in the past 10 years.
Yeah.
Now, I have no idea. I hate to even say this. I don't know if this was in good faith or not. It could just be for, hey, it looks good to shareholders. This is hip right now. but it happens to be something that's hip, that's positive.
The thing about it is that once you say that and once you make that statement, people are gonna. It's pretty serious. Like people are gonna be like, so what's going on with your accessibility debate? You know.
I also find it interesting they did this literally the year after the ESA did their lobbying, which is very interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah, right.
Literally the year.
Convenient.
The year,
Yeah. Is it convenient? I mean, could it have been in works for a while? Possibly.
I think it had to maybe
You can't
go
just
hand
release
in
it
with
in a year.
that FCC thing because it's just like that. What we're about to discover here is that most of the bullets on our timeline are from the past like 10 years.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that may have kind of made things a little more serious.
Okay, 2017, Ubisoft created an accessibility task force.
Another company.
I just love how these past two we deride these companies on the show a lot.
It's like two of our biggest targets.
That's right. But they look like they were two of the biggest companies, especially 10-ish years ago, that started implementing these accessibility features. We got to give them props for that.
I
mean,
yeah.
I hate to like bring up a corrupt point, but it may have to do with the next one.
Oh, boy.
Where some Microsoft created the Xbox Adaptive Controller in 2018 that we were discussing a little while ago. Like, listen, all this accessibility stuff is positive, but there's also like capitalism driving these accessibility features. Like, I remember the commercial.
I do too. I was going to bring
this
that up.
Microsoft
The Super Bowl,
control.
right?
I think it was
Yes.
a Super Bowl
I don't
commercial.
remember this at all.
Yeah, wasn't it like
They missed their key demographic. I guess.
Yeah, they blew
yeah,
it.
aren't you you're a football fan, right?
That I am.
Wow. I just remember, wasn't it a Christmas Day commercial or something? And I think some kid's friends were cheering him on playing something.
Yes.
You guys remember this?
Using the controller.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do remember
and
that.
it just, I want to think that's positive, but it also makes me think it's a reaction to EA and Ubisoft getting there first.
It
Right.
could
And
be.
them wanting to trademark, them being Microsoft wanting to trademark a piece of hardware.
At least they're still like the only. I mean, so I was going to bring up that Sony last year, 2023, they announced that they are working on their own version of this. I don't know if it's going to come to fruition. Hopefully it does. But at this time, I think Xbox and Microsoft are the only company that has something like proprietary like this.
I think you're right.
And it's saying something that Sony obviously is a huge company too, but their controller's coming out multiple years, many years after Xbox has theirs,
Yes.
which is interesting.
Well, I mean, I feel like Sony is also one of the only companies now that I think positively about, right? Where they
Yes.
have all the good exclusive games.
True.
Perhaps they've actually put a lot of time and money commitment into this. We'll
true.
see.
Yeah.
Riley, you're smirking a little. Do you have a
I was
comment?
just thinking, like, oh, if only their films division took things as
Yeah,
seriously.
Ouch.
Let's get Mark Wahlberg as Sully.
I mean, listen,
Great idea.
as my dad says, there's only one bag of money. Okay.
That's right.
It's true.
Yeah, right.
Another thing about EA, too, real quick,
Yeah.
I just thought of though is it's kind of ironic that they have an accessibility department, but they don't allow dismemberment in like their Star Wars games.
Huh.
Huh.
Wow.
I mean, as an amputee, like that, I want to see that representation.
Sure.
EA, if you're listening to goddamn GameCube, can you please help me out?
You do big.
Thank you.
Big
This
tweet.
is what people want. And it's the thing is that they used to have that in like Jedi Knight, Jedi Outcast.
Even
like,
Force Awakens, if you want to go up the timeline a little bit.
do it.
You know?
People getting chopped.
That's right.
So we'll go right ahead to when the world ended in 2020.
right. Yep.
COVID lockdowns spark a wider interest in playing video games and a renewed discussion about how to improve accessibility options for them. Kind of what we were just discussing. I'm guessing Sony was working on this announcement through COVID. They see where the market is, kind of see where the needs are.
I
in
think
their
that was
view.
a big like push for it, like the initiative, like, oh, more people than ever are getting into this.
Yeah,
you know?
sure. So 2021, the burgeoning popularity of voice assistants like Amazon Alexa has led to a large variety of voice and audio-based games you can play with them.
There's
That
like
kind of
thousands. It's
hands-free.
crazy.
Yeah.
Have any of you guys played one? I've never played or even tried one.
I haven't played an Alexa game. I will bring up later that I have played an audio game.
Ooh, okay. All right.
So
I like it.
One of my last bullet points for history, I don't know whether it's 2021 or 2022. The accessibility awards are a thing, like in video games. Alana Pierce is the host. I believe Ryan Reynolds was the co-host. Was that
wow.
2022?
Really?
I think that was 2022. And they sort of put in an effort to sort of make mention of companies that put in an effort to put accessibility options in games and, putting an even bigger spotlight on that kind of stuff. I think that was 2022. It could be 2021. And so I have a personal note here. Even in 2024, subtitles are not mandated or by the ESRB. Like, no gaming certification requires accessibility options. And I have a note here that says, ouch.
Yeah.
Because I rant about this all the time to Riley, where I can't believe games up until like 2010 don't have subtitles. That drives me crazy. Because we play a lot of gaming history on this show, and it surprises me how many modern games don't even have it. I don't know. It's surprising to me. Unless anyone has a comment on that, we're going to keep going.
It actually even annoys me when they're not turned on by default.
That pisses me off too.
I know, really. I whenever I'm playing games, I mean, my dad's usually watching, and he's totally deaf for the most part.
wow.
I shouldn't say he's totally deaf. He's pretty deaf, all right? But it gets to the point where he can't even follow along the story.
Yeah.
Because now we have to have subtitles, which...
And do you tend to play and watch things with subtitles on all the time, Josh?
I do
Yeah,
personally.
I think we all do in this room, right?
You know what? I'll add on to the point we made earlier where we think button rebinding should be mandatory for everything going forward. So should subtitles.
Yeah.
I think hand in hand, the both of them should be.
Yep.
Hand in hand.
Riley, you want to? Yeah, nice,
intentional, I'm
nice,
so
dude. There's gonna be a lot of that.
You're talking about the text size too.
Yeah, like
This is a big
well,
stickler
I want to
for
say
me.
this. Like, I'm surprised it's still a problem. There was a very iconic moment in history of bad text size. Do you guys remember the Dead Rising problem? Do you guys remember this?
No.
Where the text is unreadable. Keep in mind, this is 2006, where HD TVs were still not standard.
Yep.
Right.
So if you played Dead Rising on a standard definition TV, you could not read it. The subtitles are so small you can't read it. And so that was a huge problem. And I don't understand like why text size is not like customizable. It rarely is. But like Riley, I think you had something to say about like streaming services that do this.
Amazon Prime, to their credit. I mean, it's nothing mind blowing, but there are, I think, 5 different sizes you can choose from, and there's different types of contrast you can choose, whichever is most visible to you. I think they could go even further, but I feel like most games and streaming services could benefit from something like that.
This is something that really gets me, right? Because listen, I'm not blind. I'm not close to legally blind, but my eyesight is not very good, especially as I've gotten older. And I don't sit right in front of my TV. So there are some games that I'm not saying they're unplayable, but I might have to pause to actually read something.
Right.
I mean, an unfortunate problem was Disco Elysium. I thought the text was very small.
Interesting.
And I have a lot of issues with Switch games going from portable to docked, with the text not being big enough.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Got it. Now, the next section I have for this discussion is it's a little bit of, I guess, a negative segment. A
negative segment on goddamn Gamecube?
I know.
Wow.
So
Starting
we're going
with the finger wags.
yeah, the finger wag section. We're going to talk about what I'd like to call examples of exclusion in prominent games. That's going to be this section. Riley, you're going to start.
Yes, I am. So I had to really dig deep for this, like just issues that I've experienced that I feel like must be even worse for someone who is at a disadvantage like this. Like, so this is most prevalent in 80s and 90s games, but I get really frustrated when the signposting of what you're supposed to do or where you're supposed to go is bad or non-existent.
Yeah.
The people deride kind of the compass feature in games a lot, but I feel like I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be an option, at least, that you can switch on or off. Like the most it's not this bad anymore, of course, but a great example I have for this is Castlevania 2, where you have to go all the way to the end of a screen and then duck down for like 5 or 6 seconds with a certain item in your inventory to even make progress in the game, and a tornado will come and whisk you away to the next part. And it's just like, how the fuck was anybody supposed to know that? Like, it's like some obscure NPC tells you what to do.
That's weird.
It's really just like, I think now that the industry is a lot less like inside baseball, it's a lot more of like, we do want you to finish the thing, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, if it's like an if you know thing, like that bothers me. And I feel like if somebody had some sort of cognitive impairment, like I feel like that would suck, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like for signposting too, would you say that also includes things like in the new God of War games where they pinpoint the walls you have to climb and stuff like that?
Yeah,
that
sure. I
includes
mean,
that?
and there's games where that's an option too. Do you want to switch it off? You
Yep.
know, Mirror's Edge does that.
Mhm.
And what I like also is that I think God of War did, where you hold down a button and it kind of reorients you in the
Yes.
correct direction.
Yeah,
right.
that's
Very
right.
simple, very elegant, and
Yeah.
you can turn it off if you want. So
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
So moving on with our examples of exclusion. So this is interesting because I feel like I'm calling us quote unquote Halo fans on this show because we make fun of it a lot. But so the point I'm trying to make is no Halo game had full subtitles until Halo ODST, which is 2009. And even in the re-released Master Chief Collection, their subtitles are still not in the game.
When did that come out? Master Chief Collection?
2016?
2014.
2014.
Ugh.
Wow.
So I want to add on to that very quickly. It's
Please.
really heartbreaking because the thing about it is that I don't necessarily hold it against them for not doing it back then. But when you re-release it, like the only
No
thing,
reason not to.
there's no reason not to. I think it's only in cutscenes for the most part.
Yeah, I remember saying to you, I'm replaying Halo 2 in the Master Chief Collection, and there's a bunch of gunfire, and some sergeant is yelling at me, bravo, he's telling me where to go. I'm like, I missed it.
It sucks. It sucks because
Mission
like
failed, Spartan.
Yeah.
I remember how I discovered all this stuff is like after I played the game for the first time on I think it was like Bungie.org or something, and it was just like they had the full script for every level, so I just read through it. And it's great stuff. Like it informs like so much about the world, and there's a lot of good jokes and stuff, but if you don't have subtitles and you're hard of hearing, like it's not
Right.
going to be a good time.
So I'm gonna move ahead to, I guess, back in this case to 2003. We're going to talk about Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. You know, unfortunately, one of the best games ever made has a problem at the way end of the game. So if you're not familiar with the game, I'll explain it. There is a puzzle where you have to listen to the sound of falling water. Because like Farah, it's like the dream sequence where Farah's like trying to get you to go to like the baths or like that kind of section. And so it's kind of a Lost Woods kind of thing where you have to listen to the sound of falling water and go through that curtain door, but you keep appearing at different curtain doors and you have to go to the right one when you hear water dripping. But if you can't hear the water dripping, what do? Like you're going to be walking through random curtains for hours.
Yeah.
Like there's no way to finish it. And so what I find interesting about this is, I don't know if this was on purpose, but I called it a Lost Woods Ocarina of Time kind of thing. Ocarina of Time has kind of an accessibility friendly way of doing this, but I don't know if it's intentional. You know, in the Lost Woods, if you get close enough to one of the sort of tree trunk doors, it will actually show you the next area.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like you don't, how do I put this? It's not all up to random chance. If you want to tippy toe your way to the edge of the door, it'll reveal it to you.
If it's it'll stay black if it's the exit.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. Correct. And also, I should say this: they also do it in two ways, where the music in Lost Woods will either fade if it's wrong, or it will continue loud if it's correct.
Right.
So if
Get
you
on the right
can't
track.
see it, you can hear it. So what I'm trying to say is they give you two ways of figuring it out. I guess I should have made that point earlier, where a game that does accessibility better than others, they're going to give you either a visual or aural way of figuring something out, and that tends to be a positive change.
And that's pretty good. That 'cause Ocarina of Time was what, 96?
98?
98. That's pretty good for its time.
Yeah. Well, it's also like, I feel like they did it for a musical reason because
Sure.
they're so big on like their own music in that game for good reason.
Fair.
Anyway, let's go to 2006. This surprised me. The game Fear, F-E-A-R, First Encounter Assault Recon, the Xbox 360 port has no subtitles, but the PC version does.
Did they come out in the same year?
PC was 05.
Oh,
Isn't that weird?
interesting.
So wait, how does that happen?
I don't
you
know.
already had them done.
Maybe
Why
it got
didn't-
patched in on PC later, and Xbox they
Maybe.
never did it.
Huh.
It could be. I don't know if like there's no reason why it shouldn't have been able to do that.
I don't know.
right?
I have no idea.
I don't know how
Sorry.
coding or porting things works, but you did it once. Can't you just like copy and paste
Unless it was
over?
done later, and then
Yeah.
Xbox
Patched
was
it in.
already defunct. I don't know.
Yeah, who
Maybe
knows?
console couldn't handle processing subtitles live instead of PC, but I don't
I
know.
don't doubt it.
Yeah, I
It came
doubt
out
it too.
later.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Honestly,
Strange.
they just didn't fucking do it.
Yeah,
I guess not.
didn't feel like it.
So let's go. This one is a little surprising. We're gonna go to Limbo, which is 2010.
We covered that game on
We
this
did
season.
cover it
Very
this
recently.
season. The very last puzzle in the game, you have to listen to the rhythmic pulsing of the soundtrack to time the jump. It's like this mechanical pulse. But if you can't hear it, what do? There's no visual cue to let you know when to jump. So you're just fucked. Or you just have to guess.
You
Just wing
can't
it.
do it.
You just wait. That
That's it.
sucks.
Don't play Guitar Hero at that point.
Wait, you mentioned that you've played Guitar
I
Hero.
have played Guitar Hero somehow. I mean, like, luckily I have an elbow, so I can strum with that. And
sure.
Button
Okay.
press with the fingers. So
Yeah.
Go
it
lefty.
works out. We got to bring that back, though.
Yeah.
We do.
I mean, Guitar Hero needs to be back.
Wow.
When was the last Guitar Hero?
I don't
What year
know.
was that?
I mean, we won't go on this tangent forever, but did I tell you guys one of my friends won a Guitar Hero championship and played Guitar Hero at Symphony Hall?
That's
with a
actually
symphony? Did I tell you
awesome.
this?
That's nuts.
That is cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess there was a lot of latency during the symphony performance, and he almost failed the song, like it was in the red. Oh
no.
That's really funny. Anyway,
I have a rant here.
sure.
Please.
So getting back on the Halo train.
Uh-oh.
So these came out in 2012 and 2015, Halo 4 and 5. This was derided more from an artistic standpoint, but I was thinking about it, and I think you can attack it from an accessibility angle too, where the design of the enemies was generally seen as a lot more drab and less colorful, leading to them sort of blending into the background a lot more than previous iterations. Like at certain distances, like completely different classes of enemies will look pretty much the same. Like the jackals and elites. And so a lot of people were like shitting on this just from like when Bungie was running the show, like every enemy was like very recognizable. Like, oh, it's like a little red triangle. That's a grunt, you know? And then like when you start making everything sort of faded, it looks like shit. And it's also like, I would get frustrated. It's like I would have used a different weapon had I known this was what it was.
Right.
And in Halo Infinite, they did make this better. So I have to give them props for that.
Well, that's good.
Riley, can you talk about the Starfield?
Oh, wait, can I take this
Yeah,
one?
sure.
You should
All right.
take it,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll take the Starfield one. This surprised me a lot because of how much Microsoft has put stock into accessibility features. So apparently Starfield's been heavily derided for its lack of accessibility features. And keep in mind, Starfield came out 2023, very late 2023, right?
And it's a Microsoft
It's a
exclusive
Microsoft
game.
exclusive, where I read in a Wired article that Todd Howard said when he asked about accessibility options in Starfield, he sort of put the responsibility on, the adaptive controller that Microsoft has. Oh, and we can make the text bigger. That's really what he said.
And that's it.
That's all he said. And
You can't keep getting away with it.
that's right. And, Bethesda was very quiet about accessibility. And then when the game finally launched, or maybe when it was in pre-launch mode, IGN actually wrote an article called "Why Starfield is an Accessibility Embarrassment." And
Ouch.
and I think a company of that size, Bethesda within Microsoft, that's pretty embarrassing that they wouldn't have anything.
Yeah, well, that's why I hate to even say this, but that's why I went back to my earlier, I guess, Greg quote of did Microsoft tackle accessibility for being good dudes, or did they tackle it to get a trademark? Right?
Yeah.
Right? Because they're trying to
possible.
just get ahead of the market, but Bethesda's owned by Microsoft and they didn't
Right.
do anything.
Right.
Like,
So
I don't
according
know.
to Bethesda and their patch notes, they say they're going to add more accessibility features later in patches. I
What
don't
year is
recall.
it, Nick?
Yeah, I know, right?
Fix it in post.
That's right.
Yeah.
Fix it. So I don't know. I was really disappointed to see that, especially when Microsoft had made such a big deal
This
about
game
being
will make you
accessible.
feel like an amputee.
Finally.
The new accessibility controller.
That's damn funny.
Should I take this last
Yeah,
point
sure. Take
here?
the last one.
So I know I got a little scared because earlier you said we're not talking about this, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Should we revisit the idea of accessibility in one difficulty games like the Souls franchise?
Do you mean like, should we as a show revisit that? Or what do you mean as an industry?
Yeah, like just in terms of, well, I don't know if this is, because we did an episode about this as it relates to difficulty in video games some years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's COVID or being in my 30s, or I just don't give a shit anymore. Like, if you want to put an easy mode in, like, go ahead. I don't know how effectively lobbying from software would be at that. But in terms of like stuff in particular where a lot of these games, they don't have a pause feature. And there are some battles that just really require a very high level of dexterity and coordination to, like just fast reflexes to get through, which I could see people like just not being able to do.
Sure. So I was actually having this discussion with one of my game developer friends about this, and him and I kind of landed on, and so this is difficult, where Yeah, I said at the beginning, this episode is not a should Dark Souls have an easy mode, but we will talk about it a little because it does sort of blend its way into the discussion. What him and I landed on was this, where we like that a developer like FromSoft has a vision for the game and that's it. But we also like when developers do this kind of thing where they tell you what the intended mode is. You can choose to do the easier one, but they're explicit with you. Dude, this isn't how the game is meant to be played. Like, yeah, sure, there's a story mode or a non-combat mode. It's there for you, but if you want to play it as intended, don't do that.
Right.
But I think I'm okay with that. If I were to put my ego to the side, right?
Yeah.
And like my like artsy fartsy, I think video games should be this mindset. I'm okay with that compromise where if it's explicitly stated, this is how the game's intended to be played, we have another option. I want to make it clear that's not the intention, but hey, it's there. If it's there to be helpful, I'm okay with that. We can go around the room.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think we're also going to cover further down too when we get into some actual good examples. There are some examples of games not putting in an easy mode per se, but having a toggle feature to make the game quote unquote a little bit more accessible or maybe a little easier, air quotes, like games like Celeste, games like Hades and its God mode.
Yeah.
So I think those are a pretty decent way of going about it too, where it doesn't trivialize the game.
Yeah.
It's not an easy mode. It's not cranking down, making everything easier, but it's a way to make it more accessible. I'm okay with what you said, and I'm okay with what Celeste and Hades did as well.
Sure. Josh, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of what you were saying, Greg, about a story experience mode versus combat. I mean, from an accessibility standpoint, that obviously helps. I mean, there's probably fans out there who want to experience God of War, but might not be able to play, but still want that story feature.
Yeah.
I think that's a great compromise as well.
And you were talking about, this is going to come up later too, actually, but you're talking about the recent Jedi games.
Yeah.
And something that I liked about those is that the different difficulty options just affect the parry window, I think.
Yep.
Which is great. So it's like lower difficulties, you'll have a little bit more time to react. So that's a nice idea too.
So am I wrong? Speaking of FromSoft games, did Sekiro, does that have a pause feature?
It does.
I think it does.
Yeah.
So I think it would be
Elden
okay.
Ring?
Did Elden?
No.
No?
It didn't?
No.
So, I mean, I don't mind bringing the Sekiro pause feature into future FromSoft games. It didn't deride the experience of Sekiro at all.
Yeah.
The game was still really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, do you guys want to move on to what I call the positive section,
Yes.
where we're going to talk about examples of inclusion in prominent games? I said this a little bit earlier. I'm going to bring it up again. The most common examples of inclusion are when a game presents an object or a situation with both a visual and audio cue simultaneously. I brought up a couple of examples. We'll reiterate them. In BioShock, when a key item, if you're looking at a key item, you can listen to it glisten or it will visually glisten. Ocarina of Time, I don't know if it was intentional, but if you're in the Lost Woods and you can visually see the area change or the music will fade or not. That is another example of this. Riley, do you want to start in the 1970s?
Take us to the 1970s,
This
Riley.
is like the Metal Gear appears, like all the data. Yeah.
Sahelanthropus takes us through
The 1970s. Yeah, I just thought it was interesting because I was really going down a rabbit hole with respect to audio games because, when it comes to the medium video games, it's like when you take the video out, like how do you enjoy it, and it's so fascinating to me where I thought it was worth mentioning that the likes of Atari and Milton Bradley became pioneers in this industry where they have games like Simon, which are completely enjoyable with listening only.
Wow. Yeah.
And it seems like there's still quite a ways to go, but there's a surprising amount of these available, and this is a very dated site, but it still functions. It's called audiogames.net, where I downloaded the audio only version of Super Mario Bros.
Really?
Oh, wow.
And it's honestly terrifying. It changes. It's like, because basically what it does is that it has the music, it has all the sound effects, but it will read out to you where Mario is positioned on the screen, like his coordinates.
So it's like a text-based mud Mario?
Yes.
Wow.
And like it will tell you where the Goombas are and stuff like that. And it's pretty impressive that they were able to pull it off.
I kind of want to try that now. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool. Do they only have like really old games like Super Mario 2?
No,
or-
I mean
okay.
there's a fair amount of recent stuff. Not all of the download links worked anymore,
Oh,
admittedly,
sure.
because it's been around since I think 2002.
Oh wow.
Oh, wow.
But
Okay.
it's been in the conversation for some time. Something else I wanted to bring up, an early example, which is not the most prominent thing because this game was only released in Japan. In 1997, a game called Real Sound: The Winds of Regret. It was only released in Japan. It was developed by Warp Incorporated, a studio over there, headed by a Japanese musician, Kenji Ino. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. Died very young. Inspired by a community of action game enthusiasts with blindness. So the original release of this game was for the Sega Saturn. And it featured only sound. So it was like, kind of like a screensaver on your TV, and everything else was effectively like a radio drama that let you make decisions on how the story would unfold. Sort of like a telltale kind of
very
experience,
cool.
I guess. And then it was re-released for the Dreamcast in 1999, and there was a visual mode for gamers with hearing impairment. So you kind of had both options available, but it's pretty cool. This was 1997, so pretty ahead of what we're talking about.
Some very, I would say, what's the word? I don't know if the word is prophetic, but like maybe ahead of their time games on the Dreamcast,
Yeah.
right? Including the console itself.
Shenmue,
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
stuff.
Riley, kind of the opposite of what you were saying is where these audio games existed.
Yeah.
I remember playing some text-based games in like the early to mid 2000s. I
Yeah.
remember one specifically. It was like called Stick RPG.
Oh, hell yeah.
It was primarily, there was no sound at all. No
I remember that
audio.
one.
It was pretty good, I thought.
Yeah.
You
what?
know that's how RuneScape started, right?
Yes,
You
that's
know
right.
that.
Yes, we did an
Yeah.
episode on that.
Shoot.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. So they have those games from that are just audio only, then they have others that are text only with no audio at all. I think that's pretty
Interesting.
cool. Yeah.
So 2006, Gears of War, I didn't know this, included an option to change the blood and gore to sparks.
Yeah.
Riley,
So-
do you know anything about that?
Yeah. So I feel like a lot of our recent examples are just like recent games that we've covered. That's just the way it goes. But I was reminded of this when we were covering these, and I'm pretty sure they all have this where you can, instead of, it's like, I don't know if you're gonna show Gears of War to a little kid, but if you have one running around the house or something, and you wanna turn on this like safe mode, it's kind of like I've seen this option done a couple different ways where any like extreme content can be kind of censored or done in a creative way.
Makes it accessible to a certain age, I guess, right?
I guess
Yeah.
you could say that.
Accessibility.
Yeah, you could say
Yep.
that.
I've actually not seen it. Have you guys seen like gameplay using Gears?
Can you imagine like you're
I
chainsawing
was just
someone and
thinking that.
Marcus is screaming, but it's just sparks?
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
That's
It's like
really
when
funny.
you use the chainsaw on another chainsaw kind of thing.
Oh,
Like,
it
looks
sparks
that.
like
makes
it's
sense.
grinding together.
Yeah.
Kind of cool.
So the next examples we brought up already are the Bioshock items, the Borderlands colorblind mode. This Celeste example is interesting to me. In 2018, Celeste is notoriously very hard, and Maddie was very explicit about how they made this game the way they wanted to make it. You're going to learn how it works by failing a lot. However, what Maddie expressed in an interview was that it did like. I guess what's the word? Like a metaphorically killed her to put in like an accessibility mode or like an easy mode. But she said it was worth it to put it in the game so more people could experience it.
Yeah.
Like, what did they actually call the mode in
So
Celeste?
yeah, this is another game we covered recently, where they had invincibility mode, they had like an infinite dash mode, and
Yes.
they had a mode where you can just slow down the game, so it's less
Interesting.
reflex demanding.
Yep,
I
yep.
actually, from this note, I actually went and watched. I wish I wrote down the YouTuber's name. There is a YouTuber who is blind. I have a video of him playing Celeste.
That's awesome.
Using this mode, and it was pretty cool to watch.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wish I remembered his name, but I'm sure if you go on YouTube and search for that, you'll find it.
Riley, Nick or Riley, did you want to take the Outer Worlds one that's next?
So yeah, I wanted to bring this up because this game was made by Obsidian.
Yeah.
And the entire game, the reason it looks like that is that one of the guys is colorblind, one of the
Really?
creators.
Is it Tim or Leonard?
I forget.
Okay.
But that's the reason why it looks very peculiar.
Yeah.
It's like, exploring strange planets and stuff like that. and it reminded me of Ben and Jerry. Do you guys know about this? Ben and Jerry's?
No.
You mean the ice cream?
Yes.
Can I wait before you continue? Can I say two really weird quick things?
Yeah.
I have met Tim and Leonard, and I've also met Ben and Jerry.
That's
Really?
In real life.
Holy smokes.
How did you meet both of these sets of people?
So I met Tim and Leonard at PAX East when I was
Okay.
doing the barbershop thing.
Yep.
I met Ben and Jerry at the Middle East upstairs, the music club.
What?
No kidding.
What are they doing there?
They were doing an ice cream giveaway as a part of a Bernie Sanders event
At the Middle East?
at the Middle East upstairs.
That's crazy.
I met him.
But
Anyway, go ahead.
No, the thing about Ben and Jerry is, and I can't tell you which one of these guys is has this, but one of them cannot taste flavors.
No.
So the reason,
Should be an ice cream man.
Yeah.
but the reason why all their stuff has so much, like, crap in there, like the nuts and all that stuff, is so he can feel like the textures and stuff.
Oh,
So-
textural based eating.
Textural based accessibility.
Wow.
ASMR
Accessible.
ice cream.
Exactly.
I love that. That's
so
awesome.
it reminded me, you got two duos who have this situation.
So we're going to move on to White Shadows, another game we covered. There's a content warning about animal cruelty and depictions of racial and social violence.
Yes.
So I think that's an interesting point, where I think it is related to accessibility in a way, right? Where content and trigger warnings are starting to appear before either video games, books, whatnot. It's interesting. I like the inclusion of these when they're appropriate.
Now, Riley, I do want you and Nick to take the next ones, but I want to bring up something first. It just made me laugh. Okay. I was actually talking about this with my friend Devin recently. We were joking about I hate saying this out loud. Remember the airport terrorism level in Modern Warfare 2?
Yes.
And remember that where isn't that no Russian?
Yes.
And it tells you if you want to skip this section, you can.
Yeah.
What I was saying to him was they should just cut it. Like, why is it even there? Like, I don't know.
think
You guys remember that shit?
Here's can I have the platform for a moment?
Yeah,
here?
please.
That game, it's like you really just. I don't think playing as the terrorist really because you're an undercover agent who has to shoot a bunch of people in an airport, like civilians in an airport, to like blend in. And I don't think it achieved anything.
No.
You know what I mean? Like
No.
it's just
Doesn't add anything.
it doesn't really it's like, well, you I don't know what I expected, It's,
Yeah.
But with respect to content warnings as a whole, I wanted to say my piece where I saw something recently about they're basically like wheelchair ramps. Like if you don't need them, you don't have to use them.
Yeah.
But it's there, and it's really funny because I had one specific example where my mom is very upset about content warnings. And she doesn't believe in
I'm not
them.
going to say I'm shocked.
My mom's upset about wheelchair ramps.
Oh, jeez. With the stories we could tell each other. But I find it really funny because she is obsessed with this website called doesthedogdie.com. And she cannot handle when dogs die in movies. And this website tells you about it. And I'm like, this is basically a content warning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Wait.
Like,
You should be clear, though. You're saying your mom is mad about content warnings because she thinks everyone is overly sensitive.
yes.
But then she goes on doesthedogdie.com because she's overly sensitive about when that happens.
Exactly.
Is she not aware that the dog dying is typically like the number one thing that goes in a content warning? Like they always put if the dog dies in a content warning.
I just think they make sense, and it's very because it's so new, people are reacting.
I mean,
to
the
it,
new the new 2-hour Silent Hill game that I played.
Yeah.
It's plastered all over the game. Where there is a lot of sensitive issues in this, and you may not want to play this. Or whatever. Or here's some contact lines, some help lines. I'm paraphrasing. I don't know exactly what's on the screen.
I think that's just like it's something that fits into the larger theme of this episode. Is just what it does is that it reminds you that there are other people out there who everyone has a specific situation, and it may not apply to you, but it's something to think about.
Yeah. Now, Riley, can you take The Last of Us 2?
You want me to do this?
Yeah, you can take it.
Okay, so this was actually a very celebrated game for its accessibility features. Did you watch any of the footage of people playing with any of these stuff? There are awareness indicators for people who have a hearing impairment and other toggles for people who have vision impairments.
Sure.
You mentioned here you have a note that we dog this game a lot.
Oh, that was my note. Yeah, I mean, you guys went pretty in on on Last of Us 2
Well,
during that
here's hold
episode.
on. I'm
I feel like
clear.
everybody shat on that game.
Well, I'm clearing the air here. We dogged The Last of Us 2 and shit on it for none of these reasons.
No. So
That's true.
if you the great thing about this game is that it has all these accessibility features that I watched some footage of how it works. There's some text-to-speech options. There's sort of an affirmative chime that tells you when you're on the right track or when an enemy is about to attack you. There's like a sharp kind of damage sound.
Yep.
So if anyone, no matter your situation, if you have any kind of impairment, you too can be horribly depressed by The Last of Us 2.
And what I find really cool about this too, there's actually a whole web page, whether it's from Naughty Dog or Sony, I can't remember, dedicated to all the accessibility features in this game and what they do specifically with screenshots, which I think is really cool. They explain everything bit by bit on what you can do.
Well, Naughty Dog's a very thoughtful company, no matter how much you love or hate them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I think so.
I
Did a
agree.
good job with
Nick,
that.
did you want to take God of War Ragnarok?
Yeah, I think God of War Ragnarok is really the first game I experienced where I was blown away by how good the accessibility options were. So a few of them, we're not going to go through all of them, but there's a ton. So everything from the auto item pickups, toggling the button mashing to, I believe, where it's a hold the button instead of mashing the button. And I think, man, one of the one that really it really hits home for me is there's a motion sickness accessibility option. I know people who have a difficult time playing video games because after like a half hour or something, they start to get motion sick. Where God of War Ragnarok is they try to center your focus with a little light or something in the center of the screen to hopefully mitigate a little bit of the motion sickness you'll get from playing video games. I think that's great.
Interesting.
Riley, I think you had a point on Ragnarok
Yes.
as well.
So Alana Pierce was previously mentioned on this episode. She was the accessibility supervisor for this game.
Yeah, well, she's the host of the Accessibility Award, so it's very fitting.
It works very well. I think there, in general, is just a good faith effort being made at Sony to be thoughtful about this. Even the lowly Horizon has quite a few accessibility options that are kind of similar to
Can I
these.
say something funny? We have no notes about Horizon and the accessibility options that it provides.
No, but that's another game that we dogged quite a lot. But I won't knock the accessibility. So
Yep.
But
We gave that game a D, but not for its accessibility options, for its
Right.
lack of everything else.
If you want to play a game that the goddamn GameCube really hated, no matter
You
your situation,
can.
you can play it.
You can do it.
Yeah, if you too want to suffer through
50 hours
Horizon
or whatever this
Zero
is.
Fun. Anyway, so we're gonna move on to the last section here, which is games that patched in inclusivity options because of fan feedback or hate mail. However, we're being diplomatic when we
fan
call it feedback.
Yeah.
Toxic comments.
Yeah.
Reddit
So
forums.
this is surprising to me. In 2018, the Spyro HD collection came out with no subtitles.
That's inexcusable.
Now, allegedly, it came out that way because they wanted to keep the spirit of the original.
No.
Dude, no, you didn't.
That's
thing.
not holding up
You
in
didn't
court.
want to open your wallet.
you didn't want to pay the guy that does the subtitles.
You don't want to pay the you don't want to pay the money.
No.
So it was patched in 4 months later because everyone hated it. Like
At least they patched it.
at least
Yeah,
they
really.
patched it.
Halo
Wait,
still
is that
hasn't.
Sony though? Is who made the Spyro HD collection? Was that re-released by Sony PlayStation themselves?
Probably those
I
Blue
don't think
Point
it was
motherfuckers.
exclusive because I'm pretty sure you could play that on the Xbox too. if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Along with the Crash
whoever did it,
Bandicoot
we
games.
appreciate opening the wallet.
After the fact.
Oh, another game that we hate a lot is Destiny 2. You too can play bad games. Destiny 2 adds an auto fire option for all weapons, so you don't have to pull the trigger every time for single shot weapons. You can just hold it down.
That's pretty nice, actually.
Yep.
A game I really want to play. Also, when I say things like that, it tends to age like milk. When I say
Wait, we all. Oh
I
my
can't
god!
wait to play Control.
Because that's the same universe.
Yes.
Oh, so this could be really.
I
funny.
remember I said I can't wait to play Control, and then I hated it. And I'm about to say I can't wait to play Alan Wake 2.
I can't wait to cut this to do another Greg Hates Everything
I know.
episode. I'm waiting
so
for it.
Alan Wake 2 added a toggle to reduce horror flashes to help with photosensitivity.
like jump scare stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm guessing is that for like seizures
Yes.
and that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's really good of them. them.
So Baldur's Gate 3.
Wait, before
yes.
you get into that,
Uh-oh.
a great Goofus and Gallant here. Remember when Cyberpunk launched with it was giving people seizures?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's
mechanic.
right.
Yeah, I
So
remember
they're
that.
going on the naughty list, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's another game that's like, it's good now.
Right.
But it wasn't, 3
Good
years ago.
now.
I just like how so many of the examples are, hey, well, we hated it, but if you want to play it, it's
can.
accessible.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
None of
next
the good
one-
games are accessible.
That's
though.
right.
No, anyway.
Yeah. Another game we really want to play here is Baldur's Gate 3, but they've been releasing series of patches to add more accessibility. The game launched with a good amount of accessibility features, but they've been adding more as feedback has come in. Again, Larian Studio is one of our favorite developers right now. They're doing good by their players. Their recent patch was to help with players who are colorblind. They have 3 different colorblind modes, which is really interesting. I've not heard of that before, to suit protanopia, deuteranopia, and shritinopia, which are 3 different kinds of color blindness. I had not heard of those until I read their patch notes.
It's color blindness to specific colors like
Yes.
red, green, blue, yellow.
Yeah, which is really
Interesting.
cool. I learned something from reading their patch notes. So very well done by Larian there.
And now, Josh, you're a big Star Wars guy. The
is
last
true.
note we have here is Jedi Survivor includes an arachnophobia mode,
Yeah.
which changes enemies to be less spider-like.
Wow.
I mean,
You
did
ever
you
mess
know?
around
Wait,
with
did you
that
play
one?
Jedi Survivor?
I didn't get to yet.
We
no.
haven't yet either. Maybe we'll have you back.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I like
be your
that.
Star Wars guy.
Yep.
Maybe with arachnophobia mode on, I can actually play it. 'Cause
Oh.
that's good for me.
Good
That's
for
a
you.
great
Spiders.
mode for me. I hate spiders.
I've seen it. It just kind of makes them more like blocky, less like skittery. You
It's
know?
like PS2 era spiders.
Yeah.
It's more like Minecraft.
Yeah, they're-
Minecraft mode, yeah.
Spiders.
I should be jealous of spiders. They have more arms than I do.
Oh, Jesus.
It's scary.
But I guess
right?
you
They're
guys
really
do
hogging
too.
the market on that. I think.
8 legs? Are you kidding me?
So we're gonna get to final thoughts here. So I guess I'll start. We'll go around the room. Number one, I want to say thank you to Josh for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
We were talking about this for what, a year? I think about having
Felt
you on?
like more than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We got to do a quick shout out to Reed, the best FedEx driver in the world.
Hell yeah.
Reed is a consistent listener to the show. We did meet him when we worked at that audio company.
Yes, we did. That
Yeah.
audio company. That specific one.
Yeah. So for final thoughts here, what I have to say is like I've sort of, I feel like what happens in Gregland is like I have like an idea that percolates for a while, and then I start kind of piecing it together, and then I start to see where like how it could fit into place, and then I met Josh. So how that relates to this is I've been thinking about what it. I guess I'll say it like this. I didn't use the word accessibility until other people did, but I've been thinking about forever. Like I've been playing games since I was like 6 or 7. And when I encountered the Prince of Persia Sands of Time audio issue when I was 10, I said, that sucks for certain people. And I don't like that. Or, I encountered playing Halo and I'm like, I don't understand what the sergeant is shouting at me to do. I don't get it. This really bothers me, how there are no subtitles. And now that we've gone to the past 6 or 7 years of this word accessibility kind of going around the industry, the reason why I wanted to bring all the lads together is I feel like what's really important to me is video games having an easy mode is one thing. Video games being able to be played by folks who, have blindness or deafness or a
Physical impairment.
physical impairment, that is another kind of accessibility. And I feel like that stuff, saying the word important, I don't think is there's a better word for it. Where like there are millions of people out there who want to play games, and just let us remap the fucking buttons, right?
Yeah.
You say important, I might say necessary.
Necessary is
Yeah,
a good word.
absolutely.
And so I wanted to have a discussion, on goddamn Gamecube about this topic. And so I'll wrap it up by saying this. I'm very happy that even though subtitles are not necessarily mandated in video games, every game has them in 2024,
For
except
sure.
Spyro. Fuck you, I guess. Yeah. But every game's got them. The Accessibility Awards is a thing, right? We're now bringing industry-wide attention to this. Whether it was whether Microsoft wanted to pursue profit or not, the accessibility controller is in place. Sony has a team working on this. It is happening. So I did, I'm very thankful that you guys participated in this discussion. So I will kick it to Nick. Nick, anything else before we go to Josh and then Riley?
Yeah, so I think over the past 5 or so years is where I've personally seen suites of accessibility features. Like even actual, like we go through maybe the options menu of a game, they will have a tab for accessibility. That didn't exist, years ago. But now I think it's almost commonplace, which
Yeah.
I think is a very good thing. And now, from what I know, there is nothing mandated in regards to accessibility for video games. There have been no laws passed.
There's nothing.
But companies are wanting to do them because it's the right thing to do. Again, like you said, whether it's for monetary gain or not,
Image.
we don't really know. But whatever their intention is behind it, it does benefit people who want to play video games by including all of these accessibility options. And overall, it's better to have them. It's better to put the effort in to make them. What we didn't mention was indie developers. I feel like indie developers put a lot of time and effort into their accessibility features
with a 1,000th of the budget,
which is why a studio like Bethesda not doing that is so shameful.
Oh yeah,
when a studio like Celeste,
like you clearly have the resources. Why aren't you committing them?
Yeah,
Right.
these companies who are 1/10 or even smaller of your size are doing it. Why are you not? So for me, that keep doing. I think accessibility is going to keep getting better as we go further along here. And I think what we've seen the past few years has been great.
And before I kick it to Josh, something that I did want to say is like now that Riley, I don't know if you agree with this, you might, where I feel like now that goddamn GameCube has the platform that we have, like thousands of you listen to us every week. So, and I think it was a topic I just wanted to bring to people's attention because some people probably don't know what we're talking about or have never heard of it before they listen to this, right? And because like the gaming industry, about 10% of fans are really loud about games, right? And the rest of people just play Madden and shit. So, yeah. So I don't know how you feel, Rob, but I feel like we have the platform where we should talk about stuff like this. And before I kick it to Josh, have anything to say about that?
No, I wouldn't say that it's out of obligation or anything like that. I think it's really, I learned a lot in the research and preparation for this episode. A lot of stuff that I didn't think about and stuff that, you know, if you're a fresh young 20-something-year-old, just wait. Some of these options are going to benefit you in 10 plus years.
Yeah, and I keep delaying Josh's response, but I will say like something that really pinged in my brain. A couple of fans said this a year ago, where they listened to goddamn GameCube for the education. Like for the learning about games. And I feel like we didn't do this segment out of obligation. Like I've been thinking about doing this for like a year or two, but I feel like this is also a learning opportunity, you know, for folks.
That was our mission statement in the Resident Evil 1 episode. We want to be
informative
and funny.
Yeah, that's right.
And one or the other. We got two goals.
Yeah, we're trying to hit them both. Josh, you want to say your piece before we wrap here?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, obviously, again. It's great to be here. I know we've talked about this for quite a while.
More than a year.
Yeah. I think, similar to what Nick said, I think accessibility is definitely just going to happen with games going forward. I think it's just going to become more inclusive all around. I know you said, Greg, like, is it for just capitalistic reasons? Like, are they just trying to check a box off of their list? Is that what it is? And I mean, I think both things can be true.
Yeah.
I think ultimately they're going to be selling to a larger audience, right? I mean, they want more people to play their games. And I honestly think there's a large audience out there that want to, but can't. And I think as far as accessibilities in games going forward, I think one thing that should be focused on is not sacrificing difficulty for accessibility. I think with rebinding controls, that's a good way to get around that. You know, you don't necessarily want to do the easy mode just because you can't do something specific like hearing.
Like
right.
a cop-out.
Do you know what's something I actually wanted to say an hour ago that I didn't bring up? Also, not every impairment is the same. Example, you educated me 2 seconds in, right? Where you said, you know, you can you, what was the phrase?
Congenital amputee, is that what you're talking about?
Where you said like, you know, down to the elbow. It's like you have
below the elbow.
Yeah.
I mean, I got elbow. You know what's funny? So I'm missing my left hand, but my left elbow is double jointed, but my right one isn't, which is a very useless feature to have in reality. But I mean, that's how I play Guitar Hero. I can strum the hell out of that thing. So,
and I was gonna say, like, some people have beaten these games like Souls or whatever, Halo, with a Guitar Hero controller.
Yes. Right.
Like, you know, the human ingenuity is more than you'd expect, but let's make it as easy as possible on everybody. You know.
I think going forward, if there's an accessibility awards, I know you know who to send over there for your goddamn GameCube representative.
Yeah,
absolutely, man.
I love that.
Your Nub Scout.
No, that's funny. Now, Riley, anything else to wrap us here? Or are we set for this one?
I don't think so, except thank you, Josh, for coming on.
Thank you, Josh.
We got to have you back for Jedi.
Absolutely.
I have a lot of Star Wars thoughts I need to get off my chest. So
Please. That'd be fun.
let's go for it.
Yeah, so thank you, Josh, for joining. This is really informative. I learned a lot, and I hope folks listening learned something as well. So that's going to do it for Goddamn GameCube, and we will see you next time. Thanks.